Patrick, I know you've heard this introduction before because we did it as part of the teaser video, but I want you to pretend like you haven't heard this before, okay?
Certainly.
Okay, so everyone's heard of the Wagga effect, haven't they?
By road or rail, Wagga Wagga is about 320 miles from Sydney.
It refers to the disproportionate number of top Australian athletes who grew up in the country town of Wagga Wagga, including superstar cricketers, tennis players, and Australian rules footballers. Don't ask me which ones. You know them. Look it up. Google it.
Yeah. We know them.
But to Dave Stewart and Annie Lennox, though, Wagga Wagga will always be the place where two miserable tourists pulled the plug on a power pop quintet and in a masterstroke conjured up the all-conquering Eurythmics. So today, we'll analyse Dave and Annie's sweet dreams and ask whether the electronic duo were at the vanguard of the new pop movement that swept the world in the early 80s, or simply at the vanguard of the infectious synth-pop movement. And if there's any time, we might also ask, what the hell is a vanguard? So sit back and listen for nothing but the facts. I mean, would I lie to you? That song actually comes from an album that we won't be discussing. So I'm sorry that if I got your hopes up there.
We're ending before 1985.
That's right, yes. Well, we're ending in 1984, both the year and the album. So let's start, Patrick. We've got two protagonists. We'll start by talking about Annie and Dave. Annie Lennox was born in Aberdeen, Scotland on Christmas Day in 1954. My favourite part of Annie's story is that she went to Eurythmics classes while in high school. I mean, this is like Peter Murphy studying Bauhaus in college. It couldn't be more perfect.
That's right.
But Patrick, do you know what Eurythmics is?
Did you not study Eurythmics in high school in Brisbane, Graham?
I didn't. No, I was away that day. It's interesting that Eurythmics, it seems to be like a way of appreciating music using rhythm and physical experience. Is that true? Yeah, I didn't quite get it.
It was originated by a French fellow named Émile Jacques Delcroze. And the great thing is that if you look at photos of Émile Jacques Delcroze, he's got a fantastically Dave Stewart-esque facial hair.
Oh.
You know, he's got the kind of goatee with kind of twirled up corners. And you think, I mean, even then, back in the early 20th century, I think it was known as a Dave Stewart.
Well, he would have done his own Eurythmics study.
Yeah.
So he has to.
That's right.
He has to learn about how Dave Stewart looked. This is going in circles, I think.
Yeah. And Annie was extremely talented musically. She did a music performance degree at the Royal Academy of Music in London, where she studied flute, piano, and harpsichord. So she was extremely talented.
Yeah, no, I mean, the flute and piano is fine. Harpsichord. Who learns to play the harpsichord? Unless you're doing music for scary films. There's, I can't imagine anyone learning to play the harpsichord.
Well, possibly because she was hoping for a gig with the Stranglers.
She also sang with a folk group called Windsong in 1974. I guess at that time in the early 70s, I guess folk was a thing, like a popular thing. You remember how Debbie Harry was in a kind of a folk group at that same time?
Yeah.
So I guess, punk and new wave hadn't happened yet, so folk was where they went.
It was either that or glam.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
So, yeah, frankly, I think they made the wrong choice. That is Annie and Dave, because Dave had his own folk tale to tell. Dave was born in 1952, a couple of years before Annie, in Sunderland, in the north-east of England. And he was a fanatical soccer or football fan in his early days. He broke his leg when he was 12, though, or injured his leg badly when he was 12, which is exactly what I did playing soccer when I was 12. So I can relate very strongly to Dave in terms of that.
Where's your Eurythmics? Where's your Annie Lennox?
That's where the similarities end, Graham.
Okay.
He then got into music. He played in a folk duo called Stewart and Harrison. When he was 15 or 16, he was playing in a folk duo, and they recorded a single when he was, 15.
Wow.
Called Girl and Green, She Said.
Mm-hmm.
Then he formed a folk quartet called Long Dancer, who amazingly got signed by Elton John's label, Rocket Records. They released an album, If It Was So Simple, and they were absolute drug fiends, by the way. Long Dancer. The stories in Dave's memoir it just seems like an endless string of kind of drug stories. The album, If It Was So Simple, 1973, is folky but likeable. It reminds me a little bit of Little River Band at times, which is...
Who was the style at the time?
And, they supported Elton on a few tour dates. They were doing okay, but I think their time came and went.
Mm.
And then Pete Coombs from the band and Dave ended up in London.
Mm.
And then Dave had his fortuitous meeting with a waitress, not in a cocktail bar, as it should have been. Like a health food cafe sort of thing?
Vegetarian cafe, I think it was.
Mm.
His friend Paul Jacobs brought Dave along to see Annie Lennox, and she was working. And he managed to fog up the cafe window and write a message into it. I don't know whether I should go into the science of how one uses their breath.
How one steams up a window.
How someone steams up a window, yes. But he wrote this backwards so she could read it. Will you marry me? And she said yes, and they got married, and we never saw them again.
That's right. They raised a family, and now they're doting grandparents back in Aberdeen.
That's right. After some initial badgering, I imagine, she eventually said yes, and they became romantically involved.
Mm. Not to being married as such, but to being romantically involved, at least.
Yes. He couldn't have written, would you be romantically involved with me?
Yeah,
I don't think that would have worked as well.
He didn't have that much breath in him.
Exactly.
He was famously short-breathed.
That's right, yes.
Dave and Pete Coombs and Annie formed a band.
Yeah, but there was a catch.
Yeah, there was a catch to it. Graham, what was the catch?
Their name was the catch. And I played the song Borderline. You can hear it on YouTube. It's quite a funky little number. It reminded me a little bit of the song Brother Louie, if you remember that from the early 70s. But you can hear Annie's distinctive voice straight away.
This was 1977.
Yeah, 1977. So punk had happened by this point.
Yeah, punk was happening. And these guys thought, no, let's sound like Boz Scaggs.
Yeah, let's remain soulful and do a song called Borderline. I don't think that Pete Coombs was that into punk, and I think I did see an interview with Annie Lennox where she suggested that she was too young for the hippie movement and too old for punk. So she thought they were kind of in that little weird spot. But the catch became another band.
Yes, the Tourists.
Which is a kind of a more of a new wave kind of name, I think.
Yeah, and they assembled like a proper band, like a 5-piece band, including a drummer.
Yes.
Whose surname was Toomey, and his nickname was Give It.
Are you just making this up?
No, I'm not that witty, Graham.
Clearly not as witty as the members of the Tourists.
It took them a while, but they released a debut album in June 1979, if that's where we're up to.
Yes.
Quite bizarrely, the album was co-produced by a fella called Connie Plank.
It's interesting you say that because I was just listening to Kraftwerk today. And Connie Plank did a lot of work with Kraftwerk, and he wound up producing a lot of people throughout the 80s. Did they choose Connie Plank?
No, I think a friend of a friend knew Connie.
Okay.
A friend of Dave's knew Connie, I think. Possibly an Australian friend of a friend, just to
bring it home?
Draw us into the story.
Yeah, so the interesting thing for me with the Tourists, if you've got a band together and you have Annie Lennox in that band, it's amazing to me that you would want anyone else in the band singing apart from Annie. Yet, if you listen to their earlier stuff, Annie sings about half the songs.
Right,
And Pete Coombs, obviously, I think he was the main songwriter, so Pete obviously sang a lot of his own songs. And it was okay. I wasn't a big fan of the Tourists, but I thought it was okay.
How would you describe their music, Graham?
It's certainly not the sort of quirky XTC style new wave. I saw it as kind of singer-songwriter style pop music. What did you think?
I feel like you could call it power pop in the kind of new wave tradition. It kind of felt new wave-ish to me. I mean, I remember they released 2 albums in the space of 4 months, which was a very new wave thing to do. June 1979, self-titled, and the second album, Reality Effect, in October 1979. They had a hit with I Only Want to Be With You, the cover version.
It's crazy, but it's true. I only wanna be with you.
It got to number 4 in the UK, number 6 in Australia. Another single, So Good to Be Back Home Again, which was also top 10 in the UK. And I remember hearing that at the time, and I thought it was great. I really liked that.
So good to be back home again.
I was disappointed that it wasn't a hit in Australia, but that felt to me like a kind of a classic new wave type song.
Yeah.
You can tell by where the Tourists came from, their musical pedigree, that they were kind of shoehorning themselves a little bit into the post-punk scene.
That's how I felt.
Yeah. They released a third album in October 1980 called Luminous Basement.
Mm-hmm.
They certainly had some success before everything went awry, Graham.
This is what I think, is that the success of the Eurythmics, you'd think that everything before that was the early struggling years. But the fact that Annie received a publishing deal when she first came to London, Dave Stewart's band was signed to Elton John's Rocket label. Then they, together with the Tourists, they had a top 10 single. They toured supporting Brian Ferry, and then they came to Australia. I mean, these are all. I remember seeing an interview on Countdown when they were the Tourists,
The Australian music show.
the Australian music show, yes, and she seemed like she was already a pop star and a celebrity then. Like that's how she came across to me.
We released it as a single, and it was our biggest success in our own country, England, that is, chaps.
So yeah, they did have smattering of success before the Eurythmics.
When they came to Australia in December 1980, I think it was, they had 2 hit singles in the space of the last year and a bit, in terms of UK hits at least. So they were kind of doing okay, but I think Pete was having problems with substance abuse,
Yes.
for instance. So I think there were major issues there. And then they came a cropper.
Well, can I just say that whilst they did tour in Australia in 1980, there is no evidence of this tour ever happening online apart from, I think it was on setlist.com. There is one gig in Canberra on the 2nd of December 1980. But I did so much searching for the Tourists Australian tour, and there were no posters, there were no flyers online. There's just nothing.
Yeah.
But it definitely happened. But the interesting for me is that I used to go and see every new wave band that would come out from the UK.
Yep.
And I never saw the Tourists, so I don't know whether they may not have come to Brisbane. However, if they did go to a town which we're going to get to called Wagga Wagga.
Yeah.
And that makes me think, I mean, if they went to Wagga Wagga, the mind boggles as to where else they played. I mean, did they go to Albury Wodonga or something?
They were stuck there, weren't they, because of a shutdown in the airports?
Yeah, it was something like that, yeah.
It was a strike caused by radar technicians. So specifically the Union of Radar Technicians.
It's always there.
So, yeah, those guys. And the name of the union was the Professional Radio and Electronics Institute of Australia. And that is such a great name for a union that led to the birth of an electronic band like Eurythmics.
It was thanks to them.
So what exactly happened in Wagga Wagga?
Well, they were stuck in the hotel room, And while they were there, Dave Stewart was producing sounds on a little tiny synth that he had. And I think Annie was like singing along with some stuff. She picked up an instrument and started playing. And this was the time where they said to themselves, let's forget the tourists. The tourists have gone. We need to do something ourselves. And they decided to be a duo from that point on. We in Australia proudly proclaim that the Eurythmics started in Wagga Wagga, Australia.
Absolutely, yes. In terms of significant milestones or events being noted, the town of Warwicknabeal in rural Victoria in Australia has a sign on the outskirts of the town saying birthplace of Nick Cave. I don't know whether there's a sign on the outskirts of Wagga Wagga which says,
should be.
by the way, guys, the Eurythmics formed here. So if there isn't, then there should be.
I'll speak to the mayor. So this is December 1980. There was a particular New Year's Eve party at the end of 1980 held by Connie Plank. Connie Plank's parties were legendary, apparently.
Right.
And he had a New Year's Eve party at the end of the year. Well, they're always at the end of the year, aren't they? Yeah. But it's good to have your New Year's Eve party as close to the end of the year as possible, I think.
Yeah.
But at the party was Dave and Annie, and they met Robert Gall, who was the drummer for DAF. Now, I can't say what DAF stands for. I don't know whether you can pronounce it.
Well, I can't vouch for my pronunciation, but Deutsch-Amerikanische Freundschaft, which I think means German-American friendship.
It's quite nice.
Yeah.
So basically, on this night, they jammed with him, and this was basically the start of the first album. Like this was the seeds of the very first album. So I read somewhere that it was January 1981 that they first started writing and arranging the songs for the first album. But to finance this album, they had to pay a visit to the bank manager.
Yeah, and said, look, we've got this great business plan. You know, two semi-unemployed or completely unemployed penniless musicians are saying, we've got a plan. We just need, I can't remember how much it was, a couple of £1,000 or maybe £5,000.
Yeah.
What do you reckon? And the bank manager said, sounds good to me.
Which is pretty amazing.
They were quite surprised. And Dave's memoir has all sorts of bizarre stories in it. And apparently as they were leaving the bank after getting the loan, a friend of theirs drove past and the friend had 9 cats in his car. And he stopped and took photos, I think, of Dave and Annie and the bank manager with all these cats. And the bank manager guy had a cat on his head. How can that story be true? And yet it's in Dave's book, so it has to be.
It has to be, yeah, indeed. I'd like to know whether that bank manager continued being a bank manager from that point onwards.
Yeah, that's right. That kind of unprofessional behaviour.
I didn't want to let you know. I didn't want to take your time. I didn't want to bring you down. I didn't want to hang around.
I wanted to talk about their first live performance because it was on the 2nd of June 1981. Now, Patrick, in all of the bands that we have discussed over the years, how many of the bands have had their very first live performance televised on the BBC?
Wow.
That's
amazing.
An amazing thing. Their very first public performance was on the Old Grey Whistle Test in June 81.
Right.
And
Wow.
they played Never Gonna Cry Again and Belinda, which is 2 songs off the new album. Clem Burke is playing drums.
The drummer from Blondie.
The drummer from Blondie, yes. I assume that our listeners are hip enough to know who Clem Burke was.
And R.I.P. Clem Burke, by the way. And also, he messaged us
he did.
after our Blondie episode.
Yes.
I remember he said something like, pretty good episode, guys, but you got a few facts
We
wrong.
got a few facts wrong, yeah.
We got most of the facts from Debbie Harry's autobiography, so you know who to blame.
Yeah, that's
Glenn.
right.
But-
It wasn't our fault.
Yeah, that's right.
Also, interestingly, on this old grey whistle test, Dave Stewart was playing bass for some bizarre reason.
Right. One of the things about the early Eurythmics recordings, and Dave has said that the last thing they were thinking about was the commercial, viability of what they were writing. And the fact that Never Gonna Cry Again was their debut single, and certainly on the album version of it has a weird sort of lengthy instrumental section, which is not a typical middle eight. And I think it features a flute solo by Annie,
Yes.
I think, and in the film clip, I think it's mimed by Holger Schucker from Cannes,
Can, yeah.
who played on the album. Holger is credited on that single with playing French horn and, I believe, also credited with walking. He did some great walking on that song.
That's good. Well, Dave Stewart was known for recording what he called real sounds or found sounds or something. I'll speak about that in a minute, but yeah, there are a few organic Atmos sounds on the album.
Actually, regarding the film clip, image-wise, it doesn't feel particularly well-formed. It feels like a work in progress. In terms of Annie's look and those sorts of things. The cover for the single features Annie looking a bit like Marilyn Manson, looking quite kind of ghoulish, which again sort of suggests that the image was a little bit unfocused. At this stage, they were kind of working out what they were about.
So on the 16th of October, 81, In the Garden, which was the first album, was released. It was recorded in a farmhouse outside Cologne. For those of our listeners who don't know, Cologne is a very sweet-smelling city in Germany. But what I found funny was that Connie, at this time, was also working with Ultravox simultaneously. So Connie Plank had more than his fair share of Scottish accents over this time. I don't know which maybe the second Ultravox album?
In 1981, the second Midge album.
Yeah, because 1980 was
Vienna.
God. my memory sometimes it just blanks.
Rage in Eden was 1981, I think.
I found this album like very new wave. Like the first song I thought was quite Susie and the Banshees. With these sort of John McGeoch guitar sounds.
A little bit Teardrop Explodes as well.
Absolutely, yeah. They were obviously listening to a lot, but also kind of uncompromising in what they were doing. Belinda has that Public Image U2 style guitar part in it. And you can really hear Clem Burke's drums on this. And some of the songs have these really unusual chord progressions and quirky melodies, like Your Time Will Come and Caveman Head. And the really interesting thing for me is Annie Lennox is very restrained in her vocal delivery. I really like it.
Yeah.
But it's like, at the time, there were no female singers in the UK who are really belting it out like a soul singer. It was all kind of restrained and held back, and she did that. She said that the vocal delivery was like someone singing while they were doing the dishes. There's a song called Sing Sing, which I really love, that doesn't even sound like Annie. As I said, Dave used found sounds like playground sounds and people laughing. And in She Is Invisible Now, there's some typewriter sounds. very new wave and very experimental as well.
But also really catchy. I mean, they almost can't help themselves.
You think so?
You know, in terms of just snappy little choruses and great little lines. So I mean, the song "Your Time Will Come" and all the young people of today. Not hit single kind of catchy, but definitely with catchy aspects, I think.
Yeah, no, I see that. But in my mind, I see In the Garden as being a very interesting and experimental album. But I didn't hear, certainly not the pop song craftsmanship of the next album. I think they still wanted to be a little bit unusual at this point. You know, they didn't necessarily care about the top 40 at this point. They just wanted to release something that was quite striking, I suppose.
And it was kind of a breach, I suppose, between the Tourists and what we've come to think of as the Eurythmics kind of sound, in that it's definitely an album by a rock band, proper drums, proper bass for the most part. It's art rock. It's not conventional rock. There are synthesizers, but they're always, or nearly always, synthesizers on top as an extra color.
Yes.
Rather than really driving it.
And then they got rid of the musicians because they didn't need them anymore.
That's right. One thing I thought was kind of interesting was that Belinda, the second single, they didn't do a film clip for it, I don't think. Which is kind of an odd thing, not to have a publicly widely available film clip in 1981, given how they became quite well known for their film clips within a matter of months. That they thought, no, let's just not bother about doing a proper film clip for this.
It's bizarre. Maybe there wasn't a budget.
Yeah.
So they went back to
I think that's
the bank manager and he said no.
And would you mind taking that cat off my head?
Can you please take this cat off my hands? So the album Sweet Dreams, 4th of January 1983, it was produced by Dave Stewart, Adam Williams and Robert Crash.
By this stage, they built their own 8-track studio, loft above a picture framing factory in London.
Yes.
And the factory had a guillotine that sliced the wood in this factory, and whenever it was in operation, they couldn't use their microphones in the studio. So if you think of the Sweet Dreams album being recorded in that kind of context, it's amazing how polished it sounds. Dave and Annie had come up with a list of likes and dislikes that they put up on the wall in this studio. And the likes included Motown, electronic, soul, Andy Warhol, dub music, and Gilbert and George. And for people who don't know Gilbert and George, they're British conceptual artists who worked together dressed in matching suits, posed as living sculptures, and their graphic style, photo-based artworks. They often appeared in their own pictures, and you can see, as Dave said, we just basically did Gilbert and George ourselves.
I'm going to have to search Gilbert and George.
Dave got hold of a drum machine that was quite rare and quite expensive, and you can see it in the Sweet Dreams film clip. It actually has a computer display.
It has a computer display, yeah, that's right.
That was a real breakthrough, apparently, from a sonic perspective. In 1982, Eurythmics released 3 singles prior to the Sweet Dreams album coming out in January 1983. And all of them flopped.
Yes.
Which is quite something. And an interesting kind of comparison for me is the fact that Yazoo were around at exactly the same time and having massive success. So Dave and Andy might have felt, these guys are kind of stealing our thunder a little bit with the electronic sound and the kind of soulful vocals. And meanwhile, we just keep on releasing these singles that are going nowhere.
The amazing thing is, the first single was This Is the House on the 2nd of April, which was good.
This is the house. This is the
on the 18th of June, they released The Walk, which I love. I think that's a fantastic song.
Step away, walk away. All I want is the real thing.
And on the 8th of October, it was the first release of Love is a Stranger, which I bought the single. And
Prior to the album
prior to
coming
the
out.
album coming out. So
Wow.
I must have been one of the few people who bought that first single.
Yeah, it got to number 54 initially.
Initially, yeah.
How did that song, I mean, it ultimately went to number 6 the following year when it was
when it
re-released.
was re-released.
But how was it not a hit?
Yeah.
Initially, it's such a great
It's
song.
a great song. Like I remember when I first heard it, it may have been on Countdown, the Australian music show,
Yeah.
or it may have been on Sounds, another Australian music show.
Oh, yeah. Or even a third Australian music show.
Yes.
Night Moves.
Night Moves. It may have been Night Moves.
Actually, I'm not sure that Night Moves was even on in those days.
But it was, I just remember hearing her voice, hearing the lyrics, and I'm going to have to scroll down a bit here because there's this wonderful moment.
Was there a particular lyric you were going to quote?
Yes, it was actually, I found it. It's gilt-edged, glamorous, and sleek by design. You know, it's jealous by nature, false and unkind. It's hard and restrained, and it's totally cool. It touches and it teases as you stumble in the debris. We liked our lyrics a little bit pretentious back then, and but I just thought that was really a wonderful verse. That was one of the reasons why I bought the single.
Well, amazingly, Graham, I literally wrote down those
Exact words?
4 lines.
Those 4 lines.
Yeah, literally those 4 lines. And I was going to quote them if you didn't. So,
Well, if you quote them, and I'll put them together.
yeah, that's right. But yeah, the lyrics are amazing. And bearing in mind, it's sung by Annie Lennox, who was in a band with her recent ex-boyfriend, David A. Stewart. So it's like, just to kind of go through the kind of layers of meaning.
Yes.
They had gone out together and then broke up, but stayed really close. They lived in the same apartment building, and they were kind of best friends.
They were the Fleetwood Mac of British synth pop in that the
right. Yeah,
relationships fell apart, but they kept moving forward and writing songs about that.
So Sweet Dreams are made of this album,
Yes.
January 1983.
Yes.
What did you make of it?
I really loved it. Like, it was, to me, you can see they've abandoned the odd chords for something a bit more conventional. It's still experimental, and it's definitely more electronic because they've got all these new things to play with. But the songs are catchier and more immediate. And more importantly, they've released Annie from her shackles, and her singing is amazing. She's not holding back at all on this. As I said to you, The Walk, I thought was a great single. It was very sophisticated. The vocal arrangement I thought was perfect. Sweet Dreams was actually quite unusual. A lot of people say it has no chorus, or maybe it has no verse.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure.
All chorus, no verse.
Yes, all chorus, no verse. But it just has a kick drum going through the beginning. Then the snare comes in on the bridge. Then that hold your head up bit just has the kick. And sort of halfway through the song is the first time when they have the kick and the snare going at the same. So it is minimal electronic pop music in its purest form, I think.
I bought the album at the time and really liked it, but probably didn't love it. In retrospect, it was probably a bit too diverse for me. There's songs with kind of bold sort of brass, certain songs that aren't cold and electronic, which was my sort of favoured style, more like a yazoo type sound. Whereas Dave and Annie didn't want to be constrained by those kind of two-dimensional limitations, and they had unlimited studio time, and you can tell that they had all the time they wanted, because the songs are extremely, there's so much detail in the songs. And you can tell that they can really play, you know, they're, at times, you know, they are playing the instruments themselves. Yeah, I think it's a fantastic album.
I did want to mention The City Never Sleeps, if I could.
Yeah.
This is the perfect song to me. It starts off with the sound of the train. I think the hook is the riff that the bass is playing and the guitar along with it. Once again, very minimal. She sings a line, then repeats it. This just feeling of repetition and the high in the city part. So it's not so much a song, it's just a series of ideas repeated. And I just think it works really well. It's quite hypnotic. The song is quite hypnotic, I think.
Yeah. It is really, really impressive, the kind of breadth of musicianship on the album. And I think one of the few instruments that I don't think features on the album is cello, as played by Dave in the film clip for Sweet Dreams. So which is pretty funny.
So after the Sweet Dreams album, on the 1st of July 1983, they released a single called Who's That Girl? And I thought we could discuss the video if we could, because it's an interesting insight into who was famous at that point. A lot of people today watching that video wouldn't know who any of these people are, I think. So the video features Cheryl Baker and Jay Aston from Bucks Fizz. Kiki D makes an appearance. Hazel O'Connor, if you remember Hazel. Kate Garner of Hazy Fantasy is in the video. All 4 members of Bananarama. Jackie O'Sullivan makes an appearance as well. Of course, one member of Bananarama, Siobhan Fay, wound up marrying Dave Stewart. And at the very end, pop star Marilyn makes an appearance. It's a good clip. But yeah, I just thought it was funny that... you watch it and think, oh yeah, that's right. They were big back then.
And it was a big hit in the UK.
Number 3.
Actually, we neglected to mention that the Sweet Dreams single got to number 1 in the US.
Yes.
Which is just amazing for the progress the band made from, you know, when they were putting cats on heads.
Yes. I'm sure the bank manager was thrilled when they hit number 1 in America.
Yeah, and that was followed about 3-4 months later with the single Right By Your Side. I'd like to say, Graham, that this song was the death knell of my interest in the forthcoming Eurythmics album.
You weren't alone there. A lot of people were like, "What the hell are they doing?" sort of thing.
Yeah,
it was.
I don't want my electronic bands being happy.
See, you can't be happy. You can't be using maracas and shakers and
No, that's
percussion.
right. That's right.
You know.
And the song ironically does a reference depression.
Yes.
But it does it in the sunniest way imaginable. It was quite irritating. Yeah. So I was not in a calypso state of mind at all. And in retrospect, I really like the song, but it wasn't where I was at.
I thought after the success of Sweet Dreams, it was obvious that they weren't going to go back to the experimental music of the first album. They knew how to write a hit song and they ran with it, basically. There were still on the album, there were a couple of left of center songs like Aqua and Paint a Rumor. I thought they were both unusual. And the production on a lot of it is still cold and sterile, which is what us electronic music fans love.
So this was November 1983?
Yes, November 1983. Now, in November 1983, I was in the UK. And on the 11th of November, I went to Brighton Dome to see them. It wasn't long after I had arrived. I hired a car and drove down to Brighton for the night. And I had to say, when I saw Annie perform, it was apparent that she was now a fully fledged pop star. Like she performed with such confidence. She commanded the stage. She was running all over the place. And And I just thought to myself on that night, they're not going to be a couple of shoegazing synth pop performers. It looked like they were going to go on to be huge, basically.
Yep.
And they indeed did.
They had already kind of found this really weird space in the public consciousness where they were extremely commercial, poppy, catchy, as well as having a kind of an art house kind of vibe. So the image of the band, for instance, so a peculiar detail about the cover of Touch, which features a photo of Annie, that the same image was used on the cover of The Face a month before the album came out. So the Face cover was a preview of the forthcoming album cover. They had artistic cred as well as, pop smarts and all that. And the album was recorded at the church, which was literally a church. And this is another one of those Dave Stewart stories from his memoir where he was walking down the street and someone yelled out to him from the church and said, come on over here, mate. And he kind of crosses the street, I think, talks to the guy in the church who says, would you like some free space to use? So, yeah, because that happens all the time to bands. It was someone an animator, so someone who had done animation for the Captain Pugwash animated show, which is legendary for kids of our generation, Graham, growing up in the 1970s, extremely rudimentary animation, but extremely entertaining as well. When they recorded Here Comes the Rain Again, they decided to get an orchestra into the room, and the orchestra didn't fit in the room. So they had to set up the cellists in a corridor, the violinists in a kitchen, and the viola players in a bathroom. And there was spaghetti junction with the leads, as you can imagine, Graham, as an audio guy.
Yes.
And so it was complete pandemonium, but it sounds fantastic.
Yes. The church is in Crouch End, and I'm very familiar with Crouch End because I have family there. And I've been there on a couple of occasions, and I didn't know about it when I was over there. But I know where the church is now. It's not far from where my family are. It was a church that they split in two. So half was for God and the other half was for music, basically. Even the confessional rooms became vocal booths, I think. It's I can imagine. If you gave a bad vocal performance, you had to say 2 Hail Marys and ask for forgiveness. But that studio became their home base, and they recorded the next couple of albums there, I think. And it's still a studio today. Dave doesn't own it anymore. I encourage our listeners to go to the church website and see the albums that have been produced there because it's pretty impressive.
What did you make of the Touch album?
Okay, what did I make of it? I loved it. When I say loved it, I listened to the album quite a bit, and I thought "Here Comes the Rain Again" was an absolutely wonderful single. And the other songs on the album, like Regrets, Cool Blue, and as I said, Paint a Rumour, I thought they were all really good Eurythmics songs. But I think at this point in their career, that's why they're there, to bolster the album. But I think for the most part, I think I really liked about 2/3 of it, I think.
Yeah.
But what did you think of it?
Well, I think they had moved into kind of proper pop territory, but listening to it now, they had more hit singles up their sleeve than they knew what to do with. They could have had like 5, top 10 hits from the album. They were really on a roll, but really diverse as well. So some kind of quite brooding kind of songs and some just celebratory songs. The songwriting craft and the arranging skills there's a lot going on in these songs, and they kind of go all over the place. You know, sometimes they are quite austere and electronic, and at other times, you know, you've got a bit of brass and more conventional instrumentation, but yeah, which works fantastically well. So, yeah, I think it's a really good album and a kind of a natural development from the Sweet Dreams album. Yeah, I mean, I think the Sweet Dreams album and the Touch album are both just brilliantly crafted albums, I'd say. As you and I know, Graham, Eurythmics toured Australia in early 1984, and on the way they stopped off in Bali in Indonesia, and Dave was walking down the street in Bali and a couple of kids started following him around, and then a few more kids, and then a few more kids, and he saw like a shop which sold bootleg cassettes, and the number one bootleg cassette at the time was a cassette called Punk 83. It was an album that peculiarly didn't have any punk songs on it. It apparently had songs on it by just like American bands of the time. And the image on the cover of the cassette and on a big poster in this cassette shop was of Dave.
Oh, really?
So much to Dave's amazement. And I'm not sure whether Chrissie Hynde was in Bali at the same time or not, but throughout the Eurythmics Australian tour, because they were on tour with Pretenders, Talking Heads and Simple Minds, remarkably enough. For the entire tour, Chrissie nicknamed Dave Punk 83.
I think you would have been happy with that.
So meanwhile, Eurythmics, as well as doing these shows with the bands we've mentioned, they had a gig in Brisbane, which you were present at.
I was, yes. The Mark, our erstwhile podcasting partner, he was in a band in Brisbane. We've mentioned this before on the podcast, called Dance Theatre. They landed the support for the Eurythmics on the 28th of January 1984, and Mark went to Melbourne to see Patrick, and you guys did the whole...
Eurythmics supported Simple Minds, and the following night at the same venue, the Pretenders supported Talking Heads.
So while Mark was in the southern states, I was asked to stand in for him in his band, and we supported the Eurythmics, and it was a wonderful experience. Later on, after the gig, Dave Stewart came in, he sat with us, and we had a talk. He was really quite friendly. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see Annie, and I think Annie left quite early. These backing singers, when they were on stage, had these red bob wigs. And when we were backstage, I was sitting with these three women and we were talking. And it took me ages to realize that, oh, you're the backing singers.
Right.
Because they'd taken their wigs off at this point.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, it was a really wonderful experience and a really great night.
Following on from what you were saying, a couple of days later, Eurythmics were in Melbourne, and I was due to interview Chrissie Hynde for the university newspaper. So I knew what hotel they were staying at. So I just walked into the hotel just to see what was happening. And Simple Minds, Eurythmics were there, and I went up to Annie, and the only thing that I've ever said to Annie Lennox is, do you know where Chrissie Hynde is?
And did she know?
And she said, no. So it was...
No, don't. Get away with you.
No, so it might have been blessed relief for her that someone, was proper kind of superstar almost by that stage.
Sure.
So to have someone come up to her who's completely uninterested in her, apart from her proximity to the singer from the Pretenders, was pretty good. And Dave Stewart was there as well. And I went up to Dave and I said, how was the support band in Brisbane? And he said, actually, I didn't see them.
Typical.
So yeah, that was the only thing I've ever said to Dave Stewart. So it was nothing like, I love you guys, which is the thing you're supposed to say to members of Eurythmics. Yes, so there's one more album that we'll be talking about, Graham, before we sign off, which is the soundtrack album for the film 1984. And I don't know if you know the backdrop to them recording this album.
No, I did hear that the filmmaker wasn't that thrilled. But anyway, you go.
Richard Branson, the famous Richard Branson, asked them to do the soundtrack.
Okay.
And then they recorded the soundtrack, and this all happened without the director of the film knowing anything about it. So there ended up being 2 versions of the film released, I think, one with the Eurythmics soundtrack and one with the soundtrack, an orchestral soundtrack that the director of the film actually wanted, which is so weird. And the album itself, I think, is really good. I mean, I don't know it very well, but it's got lots of good songs on it.
Well, there's a song for the love of Big Brother, which I think is a great standalone song.
Dark shadows move across the wall.
There's a song called Greetings from a Dead Man, which is a nice instrumental. And Julia has a nice blend of Annie's vocals with a vocoder. But most of it is just instrumental music with a soundtrack, so and sort of incidental music.
The song Julia I really like. She's a kind of a ballad sort of thing.
And very vocal heavy. Do you think this album should be consigned to Room 101?
Very good. Which is a bad
Yes,
thing.
which is a bad thing.
For those who haven't seen the film, read the book, or watched the TV show, the British TV show of the same name, I think it was.
Or if you're pretentious like me and I just know all the references.
Yeah, that's
I
right. Just because you're
I
learning.
haven't read 1984, but I know all the references. I know Winston, I know Julia.
Nominated for Best New Artist, ladies and gentlemen, the Eurythmics.
Well, I just wanted to finish up on a particular performance of the Eurythmics. It was February 28th, 1984, so it was a month after we supported them. They played Sweet Dreams on the Grammys. And Annie dressed as a man, so she had sideburns, a bit of an Elvis look. But it was a character that she called Earl whenever she dressed up like this. And this upset industry people, and America didn't take kindly to foreigners being androgynous. So I think this performance said a lot about what the Eurythmics were. So, you know, they were commercial and accessible, but they were also kind of uncompromising and not necessarily willing to play the game sort of thing. So, like, Annie was a very attractive woman, so she could have played up the sexuality. And Dave could have played the guitar like a normal person instead of pretending to play it with a violin bow like he did.
Yeah.
But
can't you play the guitar like a normal person?
Yes, yeah, like a rock and roller. The whole performance was a real middle finger to the music industry, and I really love that about them. They've both gone on to bigger things. Annie had an enormously successful solo career, and Dave went on to be the go-to producer from everyone from Aretha Franklin and Daryl Hall to Stevie Nicks and Feargal Sharkey. So he's done a lot of production work.
Sweet dreams are made of these. Who am I to disagree?
I guess if we're wrapping up, I remember from the way the media talked about Annie Lennox and Eurythmics in general, the articles that were written about the band, interviews with them, and so on. There was so much fuss about the length of Annie's hair, the colour of her hair, that kind of androgynous thing, which I found deeply uninteresting because there were people who looked like Annie Lennox at every single gig I was going to in Melbourne. It was a complete non-event, but that's all that people wanted to kind of talk about. And as you say, that reached its kind of logical, sharp end point with that performance. From my point of view, it's all about the songs. I mean, you can't go beyond their remarkable kind of mastery of videos and so on, and the intrigue of the relationship between Dave and Annie. They were together, but they broke up, but they're still playing music together. You know, I think that's fundamentally fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that helped kind of fuel interest. For me, it is really just about the songs, and they were constantly evolving, you know, during the era we're talking about. From the folk days to the catch to the tourists to the various incarnations of Eurythmics, and I've been struck really just by how good the songs are. Listening to them again, because they haven't been on high rotation for me during the last, X number of decades, but yeah, they are just a fantastic band.
You know, I could have sworn this afternoon or this morning in the dress rehearsal there was a redhead in that group.